And viewers, we are getting you the big story today of the assassination bid on former US President Donald Trump. He was hit in the ear in an attempt in what is being called an assassination bid by a gunman at a campaign in Pennsylvania. According to officials, the unidentified gunman, now who's been identified by the FBI, who's a 20-year-old, he was a spectator, and he was, in fact, he was the one who had the gun with him, and that's the latest. Now, watch what happened in that moment when the shots were fired.
Take a look at what happened. Take a look at what happened. Take a look at what happened. Take a look at what happened.
Okay, and the latest that's coming in is that the FBI has issued a statement and they have identified the shooter. He is a 20-year-old. His name is Thomas Matthew Crooks. He's from Bethel Park in Pennsylvania, and the FBI in its statement goes on to say that he is the subject who was involved in the assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump. They also go on to say, seek information from the public. So they've gone ahead and they've said that, as reported earlier, we are requesting open information. The FBI is also reiterating that anyone with information can come ahead and assist, and they're encouraging them to submit photographs. So there is going to be a lot of evidence if those present in the rally go ahead and give out every picture that they have with them. So there's going to be a lot of evidence with the FBI of this alleged assassination attempt on former US President Donald Trump. Rishabh is joining us. Latest update coming in from the FBI. Shockingly, the shooter has been identified as 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks. Rishabh, what's the latest?
So what we are learning right now, the FBI has now finally identified the shooter. As per FBI statement, Thomas Matthew Crooks, who is a 20-year-old from the Bethel town in Pennsylvania, which is around 70 kilometers from Butler, where the incident has taken place. Matthew Crooks belongs to this place, which is 70 kilometers away from the place where the incident has taken place. As per FBI, it's an ongoing and active investigation, and anyone who has further information in any form, digital or physical, should submit that to FBI. As per FBI, they are expecting more evidence for the same. FBI first did a DNA over the mortal remains of the shooter, who was neutralized within moments of attack on Donald Trump at his rally. Now FBI has given out the name, age and the location of the shooter. Now furthermore evidence is required by FBI.
All right, thank you, Rishabh. We'll come back to you as we track the story closely, because the focus currently is on finding out what in fact the security lapses that took place and the questions that are being also raised on the Secret Services there. Thank you so much for joining us with those details. Opening this up and getting in our guests who are joining us this morning, because this is the biggest global headline of the day. Pratik Chougale, Executive Director of the Coalition for Political Forecasting, is joining us live this morning. And we also have a former diplomat, that is KP Fabian, who's joining us in the morning. Srinjoy Chaudhary, our consulting editor, is also with us, and he's going to tell us about the implications of this on the US elections. And we're also going to talk about the most shocking detail, that the shooter is a 20-year-old. But before I come to you, Srinjoy, KP Fabian, former diplomat, who's also joining us live, your first comments on everything that has turned out. The assassination bid on former US President Donald Trump. Many are saying that this is the biggest turning point of the US elections.
Thank you. it is so providential that the assassination attempt failed. Second thought is that I remember way back in 1963 when Kennedy was assassinated. And then, as you know, in early 1980s, there was an attempt on Reagan, which means that America did not learn a lesson. Because when it happened in 1963, that was a wake-up call for America. In a democracy, you cannot have that type of violence. And that calls for introspection, that calls for immediate action. That has not taken place. Now, even now, we see that there is an attempt at politicizing it. That is, the House Speaker wants to convene, to summon the FBI chief and others. Well, I see the point. The House has a responsibility, but they should wait for the FBI to complete its investigation. That is most important. And my last point is that I was glad to know that President Biden had called former President Trump, and equally important, that former President Trump took the call. That is how it should be. You would remember December 13, years ago, when our parliament was attacked, the leader of the opposition, Sonia Gandhi, first thing she did was to find out whether the Prime Minister Vajpayee was safe. That is how it should be. A political adversary is not an enemy, only an adversary.
But questions will be raised, sir. And the most basic one being, why wasn't the entire rally venue sanitized? What was the Secret Service doing? There are a lot of questions. And another point that is being raised is on the coverage. Is there an attempt to downplay the gravity of what happened in Pennsylvania with former US President Donald Trump?
Well, as regards the security, I should like to say that, you know, it was from the rooftop that this guy did it. And it is the practice of the FBI to monitor and cover otherwise all rooftops. Obviously, they didn't do it in this case. So there was a lapse. Now, whether there was an attempt to play it down, well, I do not know. But I think the media have covered it in a manner which prevents anyone from playing it down.
All right, so let me also go across to Srinjoy Chaudhary, who's joining us live. And I would also like to, get in a comment from Pratik Chogle, who's also joining us. Srinjoy, you were talking to us about the fact that a 20-year-old shooter with a gun at the rally venue dared to do what he did, and he thought he could get away. I mean, what is the larger implication of all of this at a time like this when politics in the United States is so polarized?
First of all, guns are so easily available. It's not just any gun, not a Saturday night special. We are looking at an assault rifle and adequate ammunition. That's really the first point. Secondly, it's in the hands of a 20-year-old boy. Now, what kind of boy is he? This will, of course, be found out. Is he a school dropout? Does he spend hours in a dark room looking at the net, all the hate stuff in the net? These are things, of course, will tell us. But the most important thing is how this will affect the election. Because, first of all, it has to be said that the one person who has spoken out against the use or the easy sale of assault rifles and similar weaponry is President Biden. Now, the Republicans are often, I don't know about President Trump, but the Republicans are often financed by the NRA. Now, as a result, naturally, they are pro-gun. And if they are, and in a place like Butler, this is Western Pennsylvania, it's very open, it's very rural, there is a big hunting season, so every household has a gun. But the question is, there's a difference between a hunting rifle and an assault rifle. Now, this 20-year-old boy had an assault rifle. Now, okay, you can buy one, which speaks about the need for larger measures, something President Biden has been speaking about.
Right. Pratik Chogle, Do you concur with what Srinjoy is saying? Because now this will become a talking point in the elections. Many are saying, like, we are hearing the supporters of former US President Donald Trump saying that this changes it all. And there are many again who are, talking about what the Democrats have been advocating, like Srinjoy just pointed out.
Well, it's hard to say what the immediate impact will be. And the reason I say that is because if you look at the American calendar, we are heading into the Republican National Convention, and shortly before that, or in the next few days, Trump will be picking his vice presidential candidate. The other important thing is that prior to the assassination attempt, there was a big focus and debate within the Democratic Party on whether or not Joe Biden will in fact be the Democratic nominee. My belief is that now that the assassination attempt has happened, I think the question about Biden will be settled. I don't think that there will be too much more of an attempt to replace Biden, and we will be moving now into the Republican convention. So certainly this is a big news. It's an important news, but I do think that we will begin to see signs of normalcy in our politics going back to where they were maybe in a week or two, is my guess.
All right. I would also like to take one question that's on everyone's mind when it comes to security. How can something like this happen in Pennsylvania in a rally where a 20-year-old with an assault rifle attempts to assassinate, the former president? The questions about security, what are the 4 or 5 questions about the security that's on everyone's mind, and that's on your mind as well?
Well, it's important to note that this is a very close election, and so both candidates are under a lot of pressure to make themselves available to the people who will be voting for them. And so it's a very difficult trade-off, even with the best security. When you have these candidates who want to appeal to people and be close to them and get their message, there are real limits to how much these candidates can be protected, particularly, as the other guest noted, due to the ubiquity of guns in American society. So the fact of the matter is that every politician running for office is subjecting themselves to some risk. This is one of the features, one of the realities of living in a free, open democracy. And so ultimately it's on the American people and our culture to make sure that we can have a vibrant democracy without escalating into violence. It's a very big test that America faces going forward.
KP Fabian, again, repeatedly the point about the gun culture in the United States is going to take precedence. It's going to become another huge talking point here. But again, I would like to come back to that question of security, because that is the first and foremost point that everyone is asking. How is it that, in a place like Pennsylvania, a 20-year-old with an assault rifle can do what he did? Yes, obviously he's been identified. What do you think? I mean, as someone who's been tracking, who understands U.S. politics, what do you think is going to be the larger implication on the U.S. society when it comes to this question?
Well, we all speak about the gun culture. Well, the gun culture has many parts to it. And of course, an important part thereof is that the guns are easily available. That is, one can buy it without any security check. But that's only one part of it. One may have a gun. That doesn't mean one should go and shoot a presidential candidate or go to school and shoot. So apart from the availability of guns, there's also what one may call a mindset of violence. That is, the belief that if X has something against Y, then it is all right. It's okay to go and shoot Y or YZ and so on. You see? So that mindset has to change.
Yeah.
It's not only the availability, and that requires introspection, and that requires, action in a holistic manner without politicizing it, without blaming each other.
Yeah.
Because we are where we are. Well, America is where it is. And it is necessary to find out why it is where it is, and then how to go in the right direction forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Srinjoy, KP Fabian says that while, everyone is going to condemn the gun culture, Pratik Chogle says that, there are presidential candidates in the U.S. who know the kind of risk that they're putting themselves out to. But how do you like to put this into perspective at a time in an election rally, when something like this happens? Again, many would say that there are no lessons learned because America has seen assassination bids, failed assassination bids and assassinations of their president. So what's the larger message and what's the larger point that's coming out of what just happened with Donald Trump?
Well, you go back to 1963. You have Kennedy. Then you have Martin Luther King. You have Bobby Kennedy. You have Malcolm X, of course. Then in the 80s, you have Reagan. Now, again, one person acting on his own, only because he wanted to impress, of all people, Jodie Foster, the actress, shot Reagan. Luckily, Reagan survived. And the most memorable thing he said after that was he told Nancy Reagan, "Honey, I forgot to duck." Now, surely lessons have to be learned from these things. Unfortunately, guns are so easily available. And of course, as someone said, and rightly, it's not just the guns, it's the people who actually fire them. Now, there are sociological questions that have to be answered. And these things can't be sorted out in a day, or it won't help if all these Secret Service officials are summoned by the House of Representatives. I can imagine that happening because it's run by the Republicans. The Senate is run by the Democrats. So I can understand the House of Representatives summoning the Secret Service officers and all that, and giving them a piece of their mind. All that is politics, and it's understandable. But how this will play out, there will surely be a sympathy factor also.
Right.
Yes, people will be aghast that guns are doing the harm that they are. But there's also a sympathy factor. Here is a man, 78 years old, who's been president before, who believes that his last election was stolen, and now he gets shot in the ear and has a narrow escape. There surely will be, among the Trump supporters, a sympathy factor.
Absolutely.
How the independents will look at this is something that will have to be seen.
Yeah, Pratik Chogle, Srinjoy is talking about the sympathy factor, which is definitely going to play a huge role, henceforth. What is your analysis of the politics that's now going to play out after, this failed assassination attempt on Donald Trump?
Well, I agree that in the short term, Trump will enjoy a sympathy factor. He was already leading in the polls. He was already the front runner. And I think going into the Republican convention, the media will be focused on him, absolutely. But I do think that over time, in the coming weeks, by the time we get into the fall, for better or worse, I think the news cycle, people's attention in America just moves on. And so this is a big story. I think in the next few weeks, you will see Trump consolidate his lead. But I think that over the next few weeks, over the next few months, you will again begin to see a tightening of the race. And in a sense, that's unfortunate, because I agree with the other guests that this speaks very much to American culture and the dark side of American culture. The fact that a former president, a major party candidate, could come this close to getting assassinated in today's day and age is a very troubling sign for our democracy. And I hope that beyond the inevitable hearings in front of Congress, that there is real reflection on what American society has become, that this level of violence is happening in our politics. But I fear that this will be one more news story. There will be a couple of weeks of outrage, and then we'll move on. I fear that will, in fact, happen.
Oh, okay. So you think that this is, because of, you're talking about the short memory span of audiences and just generally the tendency to move on. But many are saying, KP Fabian, do you think people will move on? Do you think this will not be spoken about again and again, even as we inch closer to the, race for White House?
Well, I hope America will sort of treat this as a wake-up call. At the same time, without being cynical, I should say that the only lesson that history teaches us is that human beings never learn from history.
Human beings never learn from history. Srinjoy, before I, let you go, from a very, very journalistic point of view, challenges before the FBI, the Secret Services, and the very investigation of the alleged failed assassination bid on Donald Trump. What are the foremost challenges right now from the perspective of security?
Well, one advantage, challenges of course there are, I'll come to them, but one advantage is that probably half the people there in Butler at the rally had a phone,
yes,
and they were probably taking photographs. Now, think of the Kennedy assassination. The most watched film in the world, they say, is the Zapruder video. Now, in comparison, there was only one film of the Kennedy assassination. Here, this assassination attempt, there must be hundreds of people with shots of what happened. Of course, it's up to the FBI, it's the Secret Service, all the security agencies to find whatever there is in that. But there will be a price to pay, surely, because someone will ask, how is it that this 20-year-old boy with an assault rifle, and he also, from the pictures, if we've seen the odd picture, and if it's actually him, it doesn't look entirely sort of normal. I mean, that's a wrong thing to say, but nevertheless, if it's actually him, how is it that he was even allowed to get anywhere near?
Right.
Because that 360-degree look is something that is perfected by security agencies. You look 360 degrees after Trump comes in, and before he does, you sanitize the place.
Yeah.
Was it done? Was it properly done? Was it carefully done? Or was it because he was moving from one place to another that people may have overlooked one or two things?
Right.
We don't know.
Right.
The investigation will tell us.
Absolutely. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining us this morning. And like we've been telling our viewers, and that this is the biggest global headline of the day. An assassination, a failed assassination bid on former US President Donald Trump. Questions are being asked, and many are saying that this is a turning point and this changes it all in the race to the White House.